Ahoy, Rufus! I see you didn't get my email about the dress code for today's video. Rufus, I gave you a Gmail address so we could discuss content for the channel. CompuServe? You mean that company from back in the 90s? It says here that AOL bought CompuServe back in 2003. When's the last time you got an email? You know what? I don't care. Just go and change into something nautical. I tell you, this guy. Now what in the hell is that? Right. Well, I guess it'll have to do. I'm definitely bringing this up at your next performance evaluation. Anyway, today's video is all about words for seafaring. To be honest, the inspiration for this video was just one word, but I figured I'd throw in a bunch more as well for good measure. The one word I really want to talk about today is yacht. I've always been confused about this word. I mean, both the spelling and the pronunciation are weird, so let's have a look at it. Blackboard. Right, so the ultimate origin of the word yacht is pretty clear, in that it can be reliably traced back to old Germanic languages like Dutch and Norwegian with this spelling. That form derives from this verbal root, which means hunt or chase, plus a final T suffix to make it into a noun. Apparently this word referred specifically to a light, fast ship useful for hunting or chasing. The GH in the Dutch spelling indicates a guttural sound, that is, one made towards the back of the mouth in the throat area. Sounds that come from all the way back there tend to be pretty muddled and unclear, so that phonological ambiguity led to the word having quite a lot of different spellings over time and across different Old Germanic languages. It's not clear how closely these different spellings tracked different pronunciations, though. Both the modern pronunciation and meaning are attested several centuries ago. The spellings yacht and yacht appear all the way back in the 1600s, suggesting that the guttural sound had disappeared in some dialects. There's likewise a reference to a yacht being a pleasure boat in the same century, one favored by members of royalty in particular. So it seems that modern English has a pronunciation and spelling that don't quite match up, although they're both well attested historically. English has never really felt obligated to match spelling and pronunciation too closely anyway, so I guess this is hardly surprising. So that's yacht. A lot of other words for seagoing vehicles aren't quite so interesting, so let's talk about a bunch of them at once. In fact, why don't you do some of the work yourself, dear viewer? Here are a bunch of words for different kinds of watercraft. Ship, boat, vessel, canoe, kayak, dinghy, schooner, ferry, raft, catamaran, and barge. Which words came into English through native Germanic sources like yacht, and which ones were borrowed from other languages? Pause the video and employ your powers of etymological deduction to work it out for yourself. Did you do it? Great. So here are the answers. On the native Germanic side, we have ship and boat, both of which pretty clearly come from Old English. Schooner is a little less certain, but it probably comes from a Scottish word meaning to skip across water. Ferry also definitely comes from Old English, and finally there's raft, from Old Scandinavian words meaning beam or plank. So that means all the rest of the words are borrowed. Vessel comes through Old French, but ultimately from the Latin vascellum, a diminutive of vas, which just means container. Barge also comes through Old French, possibly from the Latin noun baris, a kind of boat used on the Nile River. Canoe comes through Spanish, but is probably a word native to indigenous Caribbean tribes. Kayak, also an indigenous word, this time from Greenlandic and Eastern Canadian Inuits. Now, both dinghy and catamaran entered English when the British colonized India. Dinghy is actually a Hindi word for a particular type of small boat, and catamaran is from a Tamil phrase meaning tied wood. I suppose I couldn't live with myself if I didn't also season this video with some common Latin and Greek etymologies, so here you go. The classical Latin word for ship is navis, from which we get lots of English words like navigate, navigable, navigation, navigator, naval, and the less frequent naviform, a highly specific word that just means boat-like. The classical Greek word for sailor is nautilos, which is where this funny little sea creature gets its name. The naut root also comes up in lots of English words like nautical, and as a suffix in words like astronaut, cosmonaut, and aquanaut. Apparently cryonaut is also a thing, people who freeze themselves in order to time travel into the future. Actually, that sounds like a great idea. Rufus, let me know when you sort out your email. I'll be sailing the seas of cryostasis if you need me.